Sweetheart, use your sister's mobile wallet. She's got about $80,000 saved. My dad said, handing my phone to my brother without my permission. My brother went straight to the mall and filled his cart with electronics, designer shoes and imported perfumes. The cashier rang up the purchases, $8,000, scanned the phone, looked at the screen and said, "Sorry, but this phone The cashier's voice broke like a glass between us. My chest hollowed the way it does when something that's always been steady, like a street light at night, suddenly goes dark. I stood there with plastic bags and a life I hadn't asked to mortgage, while everyone in the aisle smiled like it was a private joke. My dad patted my brother's shoulder as if he'd handed him a trophy. My mother laughed, the way you laugh when you've rehearsed cruelty until it sounds like celebration. "Hi everyone, my name is Harper Lane, I'm 28. And when they say my money is ours, they mean mine is theirs until I make them see the cost." I should have felt the burn of anger first. Instead I felt the cold calculation that lives in women who have been pushed and are not allowed to break. I could smell the new leather of the shoes, the citrus of the perfume, the sharp tang of the mall coffee. The fluorescent lights made my father's smile too white, like a mask glued on for effect. Around us, people went about their quiet transactions, lives continuing, unaware they were watching the slow theft of mine. My brother held the phone like he'd won something, thumb hovering to confirm. The cashier tapped the screen, frowned, and began the sentence that would split the room. "Sorry, but this phone is what? Linked? Hacked? Blocked?" I froze on the edge of every answer, knowing they expected me to collapse into tears, to beg, to promise. They expected a scene. They expected me to be small and loud all at once. A performance that would reassure them their power still worked. Instead I watched my brother's face change in the slow, interesting way guilt does when it discovers consequences it didn't schedule. My father's hand left his shoulder and went to the cart, an instinct to protect what he'd just claimed. My mother straightened as if arranging a portrait of us to look presentable in the cameras of other people's pity. I stepped forward and the light caught on the vein in my throat. I did not reach for the phone. I stood and let the silence do what I would not: name them in public. I let the cashier's unfinished sentence hang like a verdict. They had taken my savings, my name, the quiet promise I kept like a small secret garden. But they had made a mistake they didn't see. They assumed I would fight the way they did. Loud, wild, obvious. They hadn't learned how to read my silence. When the screen finally blinked its truth, it was not the kind of truth that screams. It was the kind that opens doors, slow, sensible, and final, and I watched them realize the shape of what I could make them lose. The mall hummed. The bags rustled. My breath was a small, steady hammer. The world had not ended. It had simply begun to remember me. The cashier cleared her throat. "Sorry, but this phone is locked. The wallet owner disabled all outgoing transactions." My brother's face twisted. "What? No way." He turned toward me, eyes wide, the charm draining fast. My dad's voice, usually thunderous, cracked. "Harper, what did you do?" I didn't move. I only lifted my chin and said softly, "I just stopped letting you spend my life." The cashier looked between us, awkward. Around us, curious strangers pretended not to stare. I felt their whispers brushing my skin like static. My mother forced a laugh. "It's just a mistake, she'll unlock it." But I didn't. Instead, I watched the little spinning circle on the phone screen while the receipt printer jammed, as if even the machine refused to process their greed. When the store manager appeared, my father's tone turned oily. "We're family, you know. My daughter's wallet. We share everything." The manager nodded politely but said, "Only the owner can authorize." My brother pushed the cart toward me. "Come on, Harper, don't make a scene. You've got plenty." I met his eyes and whispered, "That's the problem. You think plenty means endless." He froze. My mother's smile slipped for the first time. I took the phone from the counter, held it close. "You all taught me that love was a bill paid on demand," I said quietly. "But the account's closed now." Then I walked out, leaving the cart, the noise, and their shocked reflection in the store glass. Outside, dusk had spread across the parking lot like spilled ink. I could hear them arguing behind me, voices echoing through the doors, thinner each second. That night my notifications lit up with messages from my father. "You embarrassed us." My brother, "You'll regret this." My mother, "We just needed help, sweetheart." I turned the phone face down. In the dark my pulse steadied, quiet, decisive. I realized revenge doesn't always start with rage. Sometimes it starts with silence and a new pin. And as the glow from the screen faded, so did the last bit of their control over me. The next morning the house felt different, still full of their voices but hollow around the edges. My father avoided my eyes at breakfast. My brother scrolled his phone, pretending not to exist. My mother spoke like a radio tuned slightly off station, every word trembling between guilt and pride. "Don't act like you're some hero," she muttered. "Family helps family." "Then why does helping me never look this expensive?" I said, buttering toast that tasted like ashes. She flinched but didn't answer. I could feel the tension rise, like invisible smoke filling the room. The silence pressed against my ribs, thick with unspoken calculations. Who owed whom, who could take what next? That afternoon I went to the bank. The clerk recognized me immediately. "Ms. Lane, we received your request to transfer all balances into a new private account. Everything's ready for confirmation." I signed without hesitation. It felt like breathing for the first time in years. A life unco-signed by guilt. When I returned home, my brother's car wasn't outside. I found him later in the kitchen, pacing. He looked up furious. "You froze the joint account. Dad needed that for the house bills." I leaned against the doorframe. "You mean the house bills from your new gaming chair and designer sneakers?" He stepped closer. "You think cutting us off makes you powerful?" "No," I said quietly. "It just makes me free." He laughed, sharp, mean, familiar. "You'll come crawling back. You always do." But I didn't. Instead, I opened the cupboard and took out the dusty old envelope Grandma had left me years ago. The one she said was for the day you finally see them for who they are. Inside were property papers, proof of ownership, my name printed where I'd never noticed before. That night I sent a message to our family group chat. "All legal assets have now been transferred to my name. Starting tomorrow, please move your belongings out of my house." The message was read instantly, 3 blue ticks glowing like quiet lightning. No one replied. Only the hallway clock answered, tick tick, sounding more like freedom than time. That night felt like a storm trapped inside 4 walls. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like approaching footsteps. Every gust of wind whispered the same thing. They won't go quietly. I sat on the couch, the same one my brother used to spill cola on and laugh about, scrolling through my phone. My father's number flashed across the screen again and again. Missed call 12. I didn't pick up. Then came a text. "We raised you. You owe us." For a long time I stared at the message, tracing each word like a bruise that no longer hurts but still remembers. Then I typed back. "You raised me to serve you. That's not love. That's labor." An hour later, headlights cut through my window. My father's voice boomed from outside. "Harper, open the door. We're talking like a family." I stood still, watching their shadows stretch across the porch. My mother clutching her purse like a shield, my brother pacing like a caged animal. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called the lawyer Grandma had once trusted. Ms. Carmichael, her handwriting still scribbled in my contacts. "Ms. Lane," she said after hearing my story, "your grandmother's property papers were signed legally. They can't touch a thing without your consent." "Then it's time they learn what consent actually means," I whispered. The next morning an official letter arrived. Stamped, sealed, heavy with truth. A formal notice declaring Harper Lane, sole owner of the Lane residence and adjoining business property. My father read it at the gate. His face turned pale. "You can't do this. It's our home." "It was," I said from the doorway. "But you turned it into a vault for your greed." "I'm just reclaiming the key." My mother's eyes filled but no tears fell, just regret pretending to be sadness. My brother muttered something under his breath, then stormed off toward his car. As the engine faded down the street, I stood in the silence that followed. It wasn't peaceful yet. It was the kind of silence that happens before truth detonates. Slow, graceful, inevitable. And deep down I knew, the real revenge hadn't even begun. The next few days were a war fought in whispers. My father called relatives, spinning stories about ungrateful daughters and family betrayal. My aunt texted me, "Sweetheart, they're just hurt. Can't you forgive?" Forgive what? Theft dressed as love? Manipulation recited as parenting? I stayed quiet. Silence had become my weapon now, sharper than any scream. But one evening the quiet cracked. I came home to find the living room turned upside down. Drawers pulled open, documents scattered. My brother stood near the safe, sweating, a file in his hand. Looking for something? I asked from the doorway. He froze. You took everything, Harper. Everything that belonged to us. I stepped closer. No, I took back what you stole while calling it family. He slammed the folder shut. Dad said you'd turn on us. You're proving him right. And you're proving Grandma right, I replied, nodding toward the photo on the wall, her gentle eyes watching from another lifetime. She told me once that blood only matters when it protects, not when it drains. He didn't answer. He just looked down, shaking as if realizing that the house, the money, the control, none of it was his anymore. The next morning my father tried a final tactic. He came alone, holding coffee like a peace offering. Let's just fix this, Harper, he said softly. We're family. Family. I repeated. You used that word every time you wanted my silence. His jaw tightened. You think you're strong now because you've got money and papers. But family isn't something you can lock in a safe. I smiled faintly. Neither is self-respect. For the first time he had nothing left to say. He just turned and walked down the path he once paved with my trust. When the door closed, I let myself breathe. Really breathe. For years I'd lived in rooms they built around my guilt. Now with every inhale those walls were falling. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the sound of leaves brushing against the window like whispers of women before me saying, finally. 2 weeks passed and the quiet was almost too perfect, like the stillness before an earthquake. Every morning, sunlight slipped through the blinds, hitting the framed photo of my family still hanging in the hallway. I hadn't removed it yet. Maybe part of me still hoped that silence could fix what love couldn't. Then one afternoon a brown envelope arrived. Legal notice. I opened it slowly, the air thick around me. Inside, a petition from my father claiming I'd manipulated my grandmother into transferring ownership. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from recognition. They couldn't control me anymore, so they were trying to rewrite the past. I called Miss Carmichael again. Her voice was calm, sharp as a blade. They're desperate. This won't hold up, Harper. Your grandmother's will was witnessed and notarized. I nodded, exhaling. Then let's show them what truth looks like, on record this time. A week later we were in court. My father sat across the room, shoulders stiff, pretending to be the victim. My brother avoided my eyes, scrolling his phone like a coward. My mother dabbed her eyes with tissue, her performance perfect as always. When the judge asked if I had evidence, I placed Grandma's last letter on the table. Her handwriting danced across the page. To my granddaughter Harper, the only one who never asked for anything but gave everything. This house, this land, and all that bears my name belong to her. She is the one who kept it alive. The courtroom went silent. My father's jaw locked. The judge looked up and said, "Case dismissed. Ownership stands with Ms. Lane." As the gavel struck, I felt something break, not inside me but in them. The illusion they'd built all my life, that I owed them my existence, shattered with one echo. Walking out, I didn't smile. I just breathed. Sometimes victory doesn't feel like joy. It feels like standing on ashes and realizing they'll never burn you again. And for the first time I wasn't their daughter. I was my own person. The news spread fast, faster than truth ever had in our family. Within days, relatives who hadn't called in years suddenly remembered my number. "Harper, sweetheart, your father's heartbroken. You should have handled it privately. Blood is thicker than pride." I listened, smiled politely, and then blocked them one by one. I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply done translating my pain into something they could live with. The night after the hearing, I visited Grandma's grave. The air was cool, soft rain tapping against the marble. I sat on the damp grass and whispered, "You were right. They would have drained me dry." A moth landed on her name, faint, trembling, alive despite the chill. I took it as a sign. She'd always said light finds you when you stop begging for it. When I returned home, the gate was open. My father's car was gone. My brother had cleared his room. The walls breathed differently, emptier but lighter. Only my mother stayed. She stood in the kitchen, stirring tea she didn't drink. "I didn't know he'd go that far," she said quietly. "The lawsuit, it wasn't my idea." I leaned on the counter. "But you stayed silent while it happened." She looked up, eyes glistening. "You've changed, Harper. You're colder now." I smiled faintly. "No, Mom. I'm just finally warm to myself. She nodded slowly, perhaps understanding that love doesn't mean submission, and that sometimes the kindest thing a daughter can do is stop pretending she's still a child. The next morning she packed her things without a word. When she left, I didn't stop her. The house for the first time felt like it belonged to no one but me. Later, I stood at the window watching sunlight spill across the floors that had once echoed with orders, insults, and laughter that wasn't real. It felt like a quiet rebirth. Not revenge anymore, but peace earned inch by inch. Still, one thing remained unfinished. A letter I'd started weeks ago addressed to them. A letter I knew I would finally send tomorrow when the sun rose on the last piece of their illusion. The morning sunlight felt different that day, not warm, not cold, just honest. I sat at my desk, the same one I'd bought when I first started saving money, and unfolded the letter I'd finally decided to finish. My handwriting was calm, almost detached, the way you write when emotion has already been processed into wisdom. Dad, Mom, and Ethan. You taught me the meaning of family in reverse. You showed me what happens when love is conditional and generosity is a leash. I used to think forgiveness meant letting you back in. Now I know it simply means letting myself walk away without hate. I paused, the pen trembling slightly, then added, I'm not writing for closure. I'm writing so you remember that silence is not weakness. It's dignity with better posture. I sealed the envelope and left it on the porch. No dramatics, no confrontation. Just truth waiting for whoever still had the courage to face it. Then I took a walk through the garden Grandma had planted. Her roses still bloomed, stubborn against October air. A single petal drifted onto my hand, soft as forgiveness itself. I smiled. That evening I received a short message from my brother. We got your letter. I don't hate you anymore. For the first time in months, my chest didn't ache reading his words. I typed back only 2 lines. That's enough. Take care of yourself. And I meant it. Revenge wasn't about ruining them. It was about reclaiming me. As night fell, I turned off the lights and let the silence fill the house. My house, where peace no longer asked for permission. The phone buzzed once more. It was empty this time. No demands, no guilt, no noise. I placed it face down and whispered to the quiet, this is what freedom sounds like.